I'm going to go ahead and get started. It's 12:15 now, and there's quite a bit of material to cover this month. So the agenda for today is, first of all, I'm going to review the survey results from our September survey. Then I'll discuss new features and functions that have been implemented over the last 3 months. Then I'll demo those features, and then we'll have at the end the tip of the month. Hopefully we don't run out of time. So the survey this year was divided into 3 sections. The first section was on TransIT testing, which is script creation and execution. And the number one, so the numbers that are in brackets are the score out of 5 that particular enhancement got. And the number one enhancement request, coming in at 4.17 out of 5, was to be able to toggle on and off the scenario details in the scenario steps page. And that has gone live since the survey. The second ranking survey result was for automatically sending test invites to testers for the days they need to participate in a round of testing, and that as well is now live. The third ranking survey result was for being able to multi-select test notes and send an email reminder to the assigned person. That is anticipated to go live between now and the end of the year. And the fourth ranking result was being able to right-click to send an email for a specific test step. And that's not scheduled at this point, but is anticipated to be done. Each of the sections of the survey allowed people to write in a enhancement request that they were looking for that wasn't there. And for TransIT testing, somebody wrote in that they'd like to be able to launch to the exact place in the scenario steps from the test note. And that's actually existing functionality. And so when we're doing the demo portion, hopefully I'll remember to show that. The second area of the survey then was for TransIT plans. And TransIT plans is our activity tracking solution. And the number one requested enhancement was the ability to have custom columns in plans, coming in at 3.67 out of 5. And that is live today as well. It went live recently. What it allows you to do is take a spreadsheet in whatever format it's in and match the columns in TransIT to that format and be able to upload it much more easily. The second ranking one was to have the ability to automatically send a message from activities similar to the test steps. So right now, to send messages from activities, it's a manual process. You go in and highlight them and right click and send the message. And so this would be having criteria like being able to send out a reminder about an activity a week before it's due or 3 days before it's due or whatever. And so we're planning to work on that this last quarter of the year as well. Several people have requested on the plans page itself, on the right-hand side of the page, it's pretty bare in there, and people have asked to be able to add an overall comment for that plan beside it. So that's not scheduled, but we're anticipating that will be scheduled sometime within the next couple of quarters. There's also a request to have the ability to log an issue when you're in multi-plan view. So you can right-click any activity from a single plan to log an issue, but you don't have that functionality right now when you're in the multi-plan view. And then there was a request to have an undo feature added to plans, and that's currently planned to be in the second quarter of next year. So then the third area is TransIT issues, and the reason we separated that out is because issues covers both testing and plans. And so the number one requested feature, which actually even beat out the toggling on and off of the scenario details, was the ability to create a visual management board for open requests. And that's currently planned to be released this last quarter of this year. The second most requested enhancement for issues was the ability to be able to create a risk register from issues that are on hold in the database, and that's planned for the first quarter of next year. We have a funnel icon that allows you to create a URL to the specific issues you want to track, and there's been a request made to add more options within that feature. So that's not scheduled at this point. And as well, the ability for the person that's logged an issue to update the description after saving the issue. So when you put in the description, and save it, there's not an ability to go in and update it if you've had a typo or something in that issue. So that's a request that's been made as well, and that's not scheduled yet. Another one is the request to be able to, when you sort your issue list, when you move the columns around, it allows you to drag the columns around, but it doesn't allow you to save that. So each time you return, you have to redo it. And so that as well will be done, but isn't currently scheduled. So we only do our survey once a year, but we do continuously take enhancement requests. So if there's anything that you would like to see added to TransIT, all you need to do is email support@makeSolutionsinc.com, and we will, if we need to contact you to get more information, we'll do that. Otherwise, we are fairly good about adding those into our queue of things to do. Okay, so now we're going to go through the features that have gone into production since we last met 3 months ago. And then after I go through these, I'll hopefully be able to demonstrate all of them. So the first one is that the scenario build audit that used to be under reports, it now lives on the scenarios page. I'm pretty confident that most of you aren't aware of that because most sites have not run the scenario build audit for any of their scenarios yet. Once it went into production, we added a couple of enhancements to it. In the old scenario audit, if the days were out of order, you didn't used to be able to have a blank day, but now with the paste from clipboard option, you could have had blank days in there. So the scenario audit will show you if you're missing days or if the days are out of order now. That top requested feature for TransIT testing, the ability to toggle the header details on and off inside the scenario steps page, is now available. The details box, so where you put a details in, the box was quite small and a lot of you cut and paste a huge amount of text into those details. So we've increased the box to make it easier for you to do that cutting and pasting. When you add interface transactions to a scenario step, it now opens up a multi-select window that allows you to select multiple transactions at a time and also allows you to see the description of the transaction types that you're selecting. And when you build interfaces, that description is also now available. Additionally, you have the ability to do an upload. So if you're trying to build out interfaces and you're thinking it's pretty tedious, the best thing to do is to export it to an Excel spreadsheet, fill it in on the spreadsheet, and then use the paste from clipboard functionality to build interface transactions pretty quickly. When you use the paste from clipboard options to add steps to a scenario, it was allowing you to add steps without a vendor. And it's a real pain in the neck to go in and change a vendor if it isn't in there. So we've now put in checking so that if you try to upload something without a vendor, then it doesn't let you do the upload. As well, in doing that, we realized it was pretty hard to search the vendor file in TransIT 5, so we've also updated that functionality to make it much easier to do. We've added the ability for email invites to be generated and sent from TransIT based on positions assigned to users for a specific test round. I was actually really surprised that this didn't get a 5 out of 5 in the survey results, because literally every single demo I've ever done of TransIT, people have asked us if we have the ability to do this, and now we do. We also added a filter to the test script column on the test report. So often when you're working through your test notes, you're going through a single scenario at a time. So this just facilitates that by being able to filter to a specific script. We've also added the ability to right-click the header of the test report and export the test report to Excel. So a lot of people have requested that as well. Another request that's been out there for a long time is the ability to log more than one issue against the same test step. We can do that now as well. And then we also added the facility column to the dashboard. So if you're trying to determine, which facility a specific script is associated to, or that specific section of that script is associated to, it's now visible on the dashboard. Previously, when you had an issue associated to an activity in a plan, when you closed the issue, it lost that retention and it now retains it. And then the final thing is something that's been requested a lot, is the ability to add custom columns in the plans. And so now admin users do have the ability to do this. No one else does at this time. Okay, so now we'll go through some of these. Okay, so I go to my scenarios page. You'll see that there's a column here, and at the top of it, it says audit. And if I hover over any of these, it tells you when the build audit was run for that specific scenario. Currently in the production version, if the audit hasn't been run, it'll still show a green check mark there. And so we're changing that to make it more obvious when the scenario audit hasn't been run. If you scroll down here, you'll see I have some with exclamation marks there. And if I hover here, this one tells me that this one happens to have day numbers out of order. And this one tells me that I'm missing positions on certain steps. So it helps you to clean up the test script before you run a round of testing, just like the audit did previously, except now it's much more in your face than having to go look for it in the reports. So if we go and click in this one here, this is the one where it said that the days were out of order. That was the second enhancement, was to be able to fix it. So if we scroll down to the 11th task here, you'll see that in fact they are out of order. So if I go in here and I right click and I fix this, and I go back to my scenarios page and I rerun the audit for this, tells me I need to refresh. So when I refresh, it's now cleaned up that audit. Again, the ability to toggle on and off the scenario details. If we go into the scenario steps page, you can see I have it toggled off right now. So it's showing patient location, bed assignment, patient name, etc. If I click this toggle here and it refreshes, you see instead it shows me the patient name, and my patient name is Peds Direct Update Each Test Round, and it shows me this is where the room and bed location is. So it's just a quick toggle, so I can turn it back off again, and when I turn it back off, it turns into the scenario details. Again, we talked about increasing the size. So this text box was very small, and some of you put paragraphs into these details. So now it's, quite large, and you can resize it, and it just makes it easier for you to put vast amounts of details into your details fields. If I scroll down here to here where they are finishing this update on this registration, this visit modify, if I wanted to add interface transactions, I can now right click and do add interface. When I do add interface here, I can say I want to filter to the ADT A08s because this is an update. I can click here to select them all at once and click save. So much easier to add interface transactions now than it used to be. As well, do I have it here? In here, this is where you build the interfaces, and only admins have access to do this. But again, you have the ability, if you want to add one now, it shows you in the transaction drop-down list, not just the transaction number, but also the description beside it. So it makes it a little bit easier if you're a TransIT admin and you don't know interfaces and someone's asked you to add a specific transaction. It makes it much easier to add the correct transaction. And again, just a reminder that you do have the ability in here to do an export to Excel. And that really is the recommended way to set up interface transactions now, because you can set up, all of them at once, as opposed to before where you had to build them singly. So one of the things people were doing was not correctly adding vendors into their scripts before loading. So let me see if I've got it here. So here's an example of this is the format that you have to use for a process-based scenario. This is available under the reports under training materials. But so in the meantime, I've cut and pasted these steps in here, and now I want to put them into my scenario. So you highlight your steps and you do copy. And we go back over to TransIT, and I think somewhere here I have, nope, so I'll go back here. So I go to my scenario where I want to paste those into, I right click and I do paste from clipboard. And now instead of it allowing me to create tasks without a vendor, it's telling me that I can't do it because it's missing the vendor. So if I cancel out of that and go back to my spreadsheet, then I just have to put the vendor in here. So one of the things that I'll show you is, so this was supposed to be capacity management mobile. And if you didn't know exactly how we have it stored in TransIT, I know that's been like frustrating to people to figure out, well, what do we call it in TransIT? So oops. Now a search inside the vendor file, and if I search, it'll show you how we've built it in TransIT. And if this is the one I want, I can actually right click here and copy to clipboard. And then I can go back to my spreadsheet and paste in. Copy it down. And now when I go to, whoops, to highlight these again. And do my copy, go back to TransIT. And now when I go to paste, it's now going to accept it. So there's no error message up here. Scroll down and you click save and it imports it. And again, if you want to know if your site has any tasks that currently don't have the vendor associated, it's pretty quick to go and find that. All you do is you go to the tasks page, and from the task page, you sort on vendor, and you see in this test domain, we don't have any, so it starts at 3M. But if you had a whole bunch of blank ones, they'd be at the top here with a blank in there. So on the test report, do I have the test report open anywhere? On the test report, you now have the ability to sort by test script. And I will say it's actually the name of the script and not the number that you need to put in here. So if I wanted to filter to the ones for the cabbage script, then I type in the name, not the number. I'm pretty sure if I type the 101 dash, it's not going to come up. So just remember that it's the name of the scenario that you would filter on in there. So now here's the thing that I thought was really exciting, and hopefully you all will as well, is the ability to send out invites for specific days of testing. It's about a 5-step process, but once you've got that process down, it's extremely easy. So you create your round of testing, and the first thing you want to go and do is run your roster report. When I run the roster report, it shows me all of the positions that are in the test scripts that I'm running, and it shows you who is currently signed up to cover those steps. So you can see in this case, there's many that are filled in, but many that are blanks. So that's why as a TransIT admin, you should really encourage everyone in your organization to go in, click their name, put on what positions they're covering, and save it. Because obviously that makes it a lot easier for you when you're getting ready to send out these invites. So if they haven't done it, then you're going to contact your application manager and say, hey, who's responsible for this one? And once you find out who's supposed to do this, you can add a user. And yes, you can add multiple users to the same position. So I've added myself there. So that's the first step, is doing the roster. Once the roster is done, you then go in and you run the test planning report. And what the test planning report does is it says which positions have steps on which days. Fairly quick to run, even if you're running 50, 60 scripts, it's going to run in, less than a couple minutes. And so, you can go in and look at this now. There's actually it's not necessary to do so. So we go back into testing. In here now, we're ready to do the next step, which is go down and create your test planning invites. Now, I'd already run it before, and so it's already here. It would have added in that, whatever that last position was, I just added in the behavioral health one. But in the meantime now, these are actual appointment invites. So if I can select a whole bunch at once, whoops, by doing click and shift click, and then right click, and then I can send the email invites. They're all going to go to me, so I'm just going to do one at this time. When I send that invite, it'll take a couple seconds, and because I'm set up to be lots of people, okay, I don't know if you could hear there that the invite was just sent to me. So if I go to my email, then this is what it looks like. So it tells you that you've got an invite and that it was generated by me. And these are all the scripts that you have positions for on Saturday, October the 30th, apparently. So if I accept that and don't send a reply and go back now and look at my calendar, oops, for October 30th, then you'll see it did put an invite there. So this other invite was for another position that I tested earlier in the day. So now if we go back to the invites and say I decided I wanted to cancel those, then I can send a cancel appointment. And you see that it shows that it's canceled. In a second here, I'll get that cancel message. And you see they've been canceled. So obviously if I go back to my email and I do the remove from calendar, it then removes it from my calendar. And that one is the other one from before. So again, pretty exciting because it makes it much easier for you to manage rounds of testing and get the right invites out to the right people on the correct day. So the next one is the filter on the test script column. I think we actually already did that one. So the next one then is right-clicking the header of the test report to export to Excel. So again, like things that people are asking for that are pretty simple, get done pretty quickly. So this is the test report here, and there was a request made to be able to go in and export to Excel, and so you now have the ability to do that. The ability to log more than one issue for the same test step has been requested forever, and we now have the ability to do that as well. So if I go in here to this pneumonia one and I take off my filter to show only the remaining, you can see that down here we've logged an issue for this step 14. If I want to log a second issue, I right click and I type issue, or I select issue, and it pops open the issue, and you can just fill it in. And that's how you would log a second issue. You also have the ability to do a third and a fourth. The next was adding the facility column to the test dashboard. So if we go back to the test dashboard, you can see that the facility column is here. And when an issue is associated to an activity in a plan, it now retains that association. And so I'm going to skip over that one and spend time now on the adding custom columns functionality. And then I'll ask questions. If anybody really wants to see, I mean, it does retain the activity, the association. Now I can show that later, but I think it's better to spend the time on the custom columns. So if we go over to plans, I think the thing that's been hard about doing things like cutover plans in TransIT is that whatever vendor file you're using, their columns are not necessarily the same as what our columns used to be. So we used to spend a lot of time massaging the columns. You don't have to do that now. Now what you can do is what's called custom columns, and you can customize the columns to be anything you want. And the example I'm going to show is this one here, where we've set up all of our weekly team meetings on a plan. So at any time anybody wants to know the call-in number for any plan or for any team meeting, they go here. And this is the list of all of our team meetings. This is the conference call-in line. This is the cadence of the meeting, and here's the link to actually launch it. So none of these titles in here, except for the finish date, are normal plans columns. So what our custom columns does is it gives us the ability to remove columns that we don't want, rename columns that we're using to be whatever we want it to be, and add as many columns as you like. To access this functionality, you go to the header here and you right-click the header and choose Change Columns, and then choose Custom Columns, and it brings up the Custom Column window. So you can see here in this specific plan, all of these ones in the hidden column means that I've hidden most of the regular plan columns. So I kept the category column, and instead of it being, it's normally called type, I've renamed it to be solution. The task name, instead of it saying, it usually says activity at the top, I've changed it to say team meeting name, and change this to be conference call-in. You can see here there's also an ability to build hover text on something. If I wanted to add another column, I just click the add column. I give it a name. Give it a column width, and that's in pixels. I say where I want it to appear. So if I want it to appear before this, so between the weekly cadence and the bridge, I have to pick a number between 181 and 190. So I'll say it's display sequence 182. I'm going to say it's text. And it's going to be a text box. And I'll say it's 20. So when I save that and go back over to my plan, you can see that it did add that column in, and it did add that hover text there. And now this is available to edit as a text field. I didn't make it very wide for being 20 long, but anyway, so it's made plans much more functional, much easier to use for a lot of different things. What it also facilitates is using it for unit testing. So I was working with a client and we were doing clean claims validation. And so we were validating claims from last year's production environment and trying to regenerate those in the new revenue cycle application. And we were able to put in here, what the original prod fin number was, what the fin number was in our mock environment, and all those different columns. And then people were just able to go in and tick as steps had happened. So again, it makes it much easier to use it for unit testing, makes it easy to use for things like this, where you're just keeping track of a list of phone numbers per se, or for your cutover plans where the custom columns, or the columns that the vendor has, don't typically match. So I've used up all but 1 minute, and I'm going to quickly go to my tip of the month. And then if anyone does have questions, I certainly can stay on the line and take them. So this is our tip of the month. When you are in a filtered list, so if you filtered the workflow tab or you filtered the task tab, and you go in then and access a workflow or access a task, and then you go back, it's lost your filter. So the way to avoid that is when you go to open a task or open a scenario or open a workflow, instead of just clicking it, if you use Control and click, it'll open it in another window. So I'll quickly show that. So if we filtered the scenarios to only show the process-based scenarios, for example, and then instead of clicking ED depression to go inside that, if I click my Control key and then click ED depression, then you see it opened it in a separate window. And so here's now my scenario I wanted to go into. And then when I go back to this tab, it's retained the filter. So we're right at time now, but if anybody has any questions, then like I said, I've got time. I can stay on the line if anyone has questions to ask. Okay, it sounds like no one has any questions, so we'll sign off then, and I appreciate everyone joining today. Have a great day.